What do you call two guys that were there when this happened?
Back to return at Spurlock. Michael Spurlock at the 10. He's to the 20. He's to the 25. For the 30. To the 40-yard line. We could see history. 50, 40, to the 30-yard line. Run, Michael, run, Michael, run, Michael, run. Touchdown, Tampa Bay. There you go.
And that.
Shotgun set. 3 receivers left. And here's the snap, and the blitzer is picked up. Brady underneath. Caught ball. Evans. He has the record at the 11-yard line. Mike Evans becomes the first NFL player in league history to record 1,000 yards or more in his first 7 seasons and want to throw by Brady. Congratulations, Mike Evans.
Who can forget?
Gannon looking, Gannon throws up the middle. That's intercepted at the 30. Derek Brooks, 30. Touchdown, Tampa Bay. Derek Brooks, the most valuable player in the National Football League. There it is. The dagger's in. We're going to win the Super Bowl. Here's the snap. Mahomes running to his right. Look out. He may run. Mahomes directly. Oh, throw the end down. Battle intercepted. Picked off in the end zone. Bucs are going to beat the Chiefs. We're the champions of the world, and we still have 1:33 to go. Devin White, what a great second season. That's it for KC. Bucs are the Super Bowl champs. They can't stop the clock.
We call them the Salty Dogs.
Welcome, everybody, to the Salty Dogs podcast.
The off-season version.
Off-season version, our first one since the Tampa 2 ladies joined us and we broke down
the season.
So it's been a couple months, basically, and a lot has happened. I'm Scott Smith.
I'm Jeff Ryan.
We are the Salty Dogs.
Uh-huh.
And we are back.
Well, quickly. It's not as a long version, a little shorter version.
And we have actually 2 guests.
Mm-hmm.
Thomas McGaughey, the Bucs' new special teams coordinator, is going to join us, and I'm very excited to ask him his opinion on the new kickoff return rule.
Yeah, looking forward to getting to meet him.
Potential impact of that. And then Brianna Dix, the team writer-reporter, who was part of that last Tampa 2 podcast with us, is going to join me, and because we've both done a number of mock drafts in recent weeks.
Yes.
So I'm just going to question her. I know you hate them. I'm just going to question her about what she's learned through that process.
Okay.
In terms of what the Bucs will do, where the quarterbacks will go, that kind of thing.
Cool.
But first, Jeff and I are just basically going to talk about everything that's happened since the last time we were talking to you.
Yeah, all the good stuff.
Yeah, it's been very good.
It is nice work by the front office again.
Yes, I agree. And when you look at it, the sustained run of excellence and the ability to keep this roster core together for these 4 or 5 years is impressive because it's been a different challenge from year to year.
Yeah.
Think about this. In 2019, that was after that year. That was Bruce Arians' first year. There were some signs of promise, but I think we finished 7-9.
Mm-hmm.
It was the last year of Jameis Winston on that contract.
Could end up being a huge contract if things had gone differently for Jameis.
But he had the season where he threw 33 touchdowns and 30 interceptions.
Yes.
And so Jason Light and his people looked at that roster after the 19 season, saw a lot of young talent, some possibilities in the upcoming draft, and said, we're good. This is a good roster if we can find the right quarterback.
And who knew?
This team can win.
Out of all the quarterbacks that you could say, I wonder if we could get.
Yeah.
Tom Brady was not the one I thought we would get.
Could we get Joe Montana to come out of retirement?
Basically.
So the Bucs obviously did the dramatic thing. Were able to sign Tom Brady. It totally worked. They were right about the rest of the roster. Won a Super Bowl. Mm-hmm. And then the next 2 years were the whole let's keep the band together years, which was really jumping through hoops to try to keep that roster intact to chase a couple more championships.
Yeah, and everyone was thinking that the future was being wagered away because it was all in now. Yeah. And
in a way, it was.
On paper it was, but it wasn't in reality because here we are a couple years later.
No, yeah, I guess you could still say wagered. They wagered and won. What Jeff is referring to is that after winning the Super Bowl, prior to that, the Buccaneers had been for years doing what I would call pay-as-you-go type of contracts without big signing bonuses, mainly just salary. So if a player got it 5 years, $50 million, it was just like $10 million this year, $10 million next year. The advantage of that is that when players are let go or traded or whatever before their contract is up, it's the bonuses that accelerate and give you that dead cap hit.
Correct.
So you were doing basically the opposite of what the Saints have been doing for years, and not giving out the kinds of contracts that push a lot of the cap impact to later years, so that you can keep more of your talent. Well, after the Bucs won a Super Bowl, they realized they had to do those kind of deals.
Sure.
So they switched gears. and Mike Greenberg and Jackie Davidson helping out, John Spytek,
Yep. Yeah,
Mike Beal,
yeah.
Rob McCartney, everybody back there.
And look how long they have all been together.
That's a pretty cool thing,
the,
too.
The youngest version, the early, or how would you
Newest?
say, least tenured person would be Jackie.
Jackie, but she's now been here for a good amount of time.
Right.
And plus, she'd worked with Mike Greenberg before.
Yeah, with the
she'd
Jets.
been his boss before.
Yeah, how crazy is that? Mike interned as her boss, or as
Under
for
her.
Yeah.
So for the next 2 years, it was a successful keep the band together process. Buccaneers won 2 more division titles. They were definitely a good Super Bowl contender in 2021.
Yep.
2022 was the 8-9 division winning season, and it wasn't a shock that the Bucs lost in the first round. And then
last year,
the challenge was Tom Brady's retiring, huge cap hit from him, dead cap hit, a whole lot of dead cap that made it really hard to maneuver. And you had to find a quarterback.
And
most people thought the Bucs would just go with Kyle Trask. If that didn't work out, they bottom out, start over. That's not what they wanted to do.
Play for that first round pick.
Yeah, everybody thought we were going to try to get Caleb Williams.
Right.
Instead,
Baker
win the
Mayfield.
division again. Yeah, they got Baker Mayfield on a 1-year prove-it deal.
And he proved
it. Got some nice incentives because of it. Good for him. And okay, so that worked. Again, now this year the challenge is you have a number of key players that are due to become free agents. And while the cap situation isn't as bad as a year ago, it's still not great.
Well, considering that you had to figure out a way to pay Mike Evans.
I think that was probably number one. And then chronologically, it was number one. So I believe that the list, there were other signings had to happen. Like we brought back Chase Edmonds, Greg Gaines,
Yep.
Zach Trenner.
Yep.
I think the 6 things that they wanted to accomplish, probably in this order, or maybe a little bit tied in the middle, but Mike Evans' new deal, trying to keep him a Buck for life.
And they almost there, 2 more years.
Baker Mayfield.
Yep.
Now this is a lot harder because you can't get him on 1 year and $4 million. It's going to be multiple years and a lot higher than that.
And there are a lot of quarterbacks that did not perform as well as Baker, getting tons of money.
Even if you just compared him to what Geno Smith got the year before, it was still going to be a lot. And it was, but it was a deal that made everybody happy.
Yeah.
3 or 2A or 2 whatever. Antoine Winfield. Coming off his all-pro season, the type of talent at that age, you can't get out of the building.
No, and unfortunately, and they used it because players don't like to be franchised, mainly because it's just it's a 1 year deal. However, it's a great deal. So sometimes they feel like, geez, you don't want to give me a multi-year deal, blah blah blah. But I think that's just a holding segment.
In a lot of cases, ideally, what a team is using the tag for. It's to make sure they don't lose them, but it extends your basically, not completely, but basically exclusive negotiating period. So if you can't get it done by the start of free agency, well, now you got some more months. And maybe that part's not fun for either side.
No.
But I do think that the team is very motivated to get a long-term deal with Antoine done soon.
It certainly has shown that they will do what they have to do to keep the guys that they have to keep, that they want to keep.
It's similar. Okay, so Chris Godwin got the tag 2 years in a row. Played on it 1 year. The next year he got it again, and within 2 weeks he had a long-term deal.
Yep.
It hasn't gone that quickly yet with Antoine, but I still believe that will get done.
Right.
Okay, and then 4, or whatever order you want them in, Levante David.
Yeah.
I don't think we have to explain why.
No. And I have one disappointment this offseason, and that was I wasn't in town last Friday when he did his press conference, because I would have loved to have been here for that, because it's he is family. He'd been here a long time.
Well, it was he had his little daughter.
Yeah, so
everybody
cute.
loves little kids at press conferences.
Yeah, they're the best.
She was adorable.
Yeah.
So that was 4, or whatever order you want to put them in.
Right.
5, Chase McLaughlin. Now, Chase McLaughlin isn't the Bucs for life that Mike Evans and Levante David are.
However,
yeah, he just came off of the best season by a kicker in franchise history, and that's a position that the Bucs have had a hard time getting right.
It's almost like you don't even have to say that, but you always seem to be chasing that kick.
I mean, Ryan Suckup
did
well, and he was especially good in the Super Bowl season. So that was a good signing, and it lasted 3 years. But at the end, they wanted a kicker with more of a leg.
And also younger.
Yeah, but I mean, kickers last a long time in this
Yeah.
league. But it was the ability to hit 50 plus that we needed, and then he goes out and I think he was 7 of 8
Yeah.
with 257 yarders and 255 yarders.
Nowadays, it's like if you got to be able to kick it,
Exactly.
or you're not going to make it anymore.
Yeah, and if you are a team that doesn't have one of those, then you're at a disadvantage because a lot of teams do.
Yeah.
Got that done,
Yes.
and then not in any order, but it's not done yet. But Tristan Wirfs, get him to sign to a long-term deal.
And Tristan's a new proud dad.
That's right.
So
Yeah,
talk about great. And Baker is about to be one
that's
also.
right.
So yes,
Happy days in many ways. For
many
those guys.
many more. What is the Advent Health Buck babies? More Buck babies coming.
So I think to me those are the top 6 priorities. And while,
I think you're pretty good there.
And while Antoine doesn't have a long-term deal yet, and while there's no Tristan Wirfs extension yet, I think both of those are happening. I mean, you never know. Those players have to agree, right?
Yeah.
But I would bet that both of those happen before training camp, probably a long time before training camp.
Right. And I think when you start looking at this roster, it really is shaping up quite nicely before we get to the draft, which is just less than 3 weeks away, 20 days away from today.
Yeah. Now, I think something that Jason Light said in the Levante press conference that has gotten a lot of traction, and some people loved it and some people rolled their eyes a little bit. When you look at all the players I just said that we re-signed, that's a pretty impressive free agency class. If the Carolina Panthers signed Mike Evans, Baker Mayfield, Levante David, Chase McLaughlin, Antoine Winfield,
Right.
people would be losing their minds about what a good draft or free agency class that was.
Yeah.
Just because we're re-signing them, we still had to make the commitment. We still had to find a way to make it work. And I'm saying we, like I had anything to do with it.
But
the team still had to make it work, and they did. So it's hard to imagine how you could have asked for this part of the offseason go any better than it did.
yeah, it went lights out. I mean, other than maybe, I mean, we'll have to wait to see how it comes together. I think it'll be fine. But, Dave Canales leaving, which, was just underneath 1 year as our offensive coordinator. But I think we're going to be in good shape that way. I think it's interesting that the NFC South, got Buccaneer ties to it with Carolina, and then Raheem Morris now, the Falcons head coach. I think the NFC South is going to be a tough division.
Yeah, well, you're in the minority there.
I know everybody says that, but I think it's going to be better than I thought it. I don't know. Everybody always says, well, you won the division, but it's a crappy division. I don't know. You play who you have to play. It's not your fault.
Well, the thing about assuming that the South is going to be a crappy division because it had the lowest wins totals the last couple of years is that that defies history, because generally this thing is very cyclical. And a division will be down in terms of the number of playoff teams it gets and how many wins its division winner gets for a year or two. But things change quickly in the NFL.
Well, just talk to the Houston Texans about what a difference it makes when you add a different head coach with a game plan, philosophy, how he wants things. And, oh, by the way, it certainly didn't hurt him by getting a quarterback.
Yeah. They have changed. They have turned around so fast.
Overnight? Well, not overnight, but
it was by NFL terms. That was overnight.
Yeah,
people thought
people
thought the Texans would be in the running for a top 5 pick, and then they win 11 games or something, and I think they won a playoff game. Beat Cleveland.
Yes,
that was better than anybody could have possibly expected the first year of.
A rookie quarterback and a rookie head coach.
D'Amico Ryans and C.J. Stroud, and now this offseason, it's impressive because they're going for it. Like they like what they have, and they're not waiting around to take the slow path.
Yeah, they said, I think we need a wide receiver. Wonder where we could find one.
Yeah, so they've gotten Stephon Diggs.
Yeah, shuffled off to Buffalo.
They signed Danielle Hunter because they lost Jonathan Greenard. They signed Joe Mixon.
Crazy.
That's a lot better. I mean, probably better than what they were getting on the backfield last year.
Yeah, well, that's what and so speaking of the Texans now, that's why I brought up the NFC South, because it can turn. And
it can turn quickly.
Right. And I did like a couple things. It'll be interesting to see if Dave Canales can be a quarterback guru
Yeah.
with
They've
Bryce
obviously
Young.
got the longest way to go because you don't know what's going to happen with Bryce Young.
And then I truly liked what Raheem Morris made a comment about when they went ahead and got Kirk Cousins. He said, if we would have had a quarterback last year, I probably would not be here right now. So that just goes to show you it is all about the quarterback.
Yeah.
You know?
Yep.
And I think we're in great shape with Baker Mayfield. Nationally, not a lot of people are believing that. But I think sometimes what is on the outside and what's on the inside of a building, inside of the building is very excited about having Baker Mayfield.
Yeah, and I think a good portion of Bucs fans have bought into it now too because he won them over last year. You know, he won us over, that's for sure.
Oh, yeah, the first Celtic. I do remember, I'm going to have to go back, but I remember saying to him, I'm glad you're going to be yourself. Not sure if it's going to work out for you.
Wow.
Don't you remember what I'm going to pull the audio of that, but I remember saying that to him and he laughed, but I meant it more like I like the fact that who he is and he wasn't trying to be somebody else. So
yeah, I mean, the Falcons get Kirk Cousins, and that immediately, in everybody's eyes, makes them the favorites by far to win the division.
Well, they do have a definitely good running game.
Yeah, that's for sure.
So, that
I really think they could have gotten more out of Bijan Robinson than they did last year.
Well,
so
they
that's
may
a little scary.
because they got a new OC.
I know, but the old OC loved running the ball.
Yeah. Also, I think a couple things that Carolina's defense was pretty good last year, and they're building on that. And so is Atlanta. It's pretty good.
But Carolina traded away Brian Burns.
Well,
they're really their only standout pass rusher last year. They just re-signed their big DT, Derek Brown, to a huge new contract. So he's very good. They have some good players. I don't think Jeremy Chin has developed quite as they had hoped.
Right.
They've got a couple good linebackers. But
it'll be a fun year to watch.
I just think Carolina, there's nothing that we saw the first year that should make you fully convinced that Bryce Young is going to be a good quarterback. Now, you know who does think very highly of Bryce Young and has said so on multiple occasions?
Todd Bowles.
Todd Bowles.
Yeah.
And he knows a lot more about it than I do.
Yep.
So, obviously, there's still hope, and he was the first pick in the draft for a reason. And we would like to see Dave Canales succeed for the most part.
Well, all the time, but 2 games a year. So,
yeah.
You notice one team that we haven't talked about in the NFC South?
The Saints.
Yeah.
Well,
I got nothing.
They're just from an analyzing what they're doing standpoint, it's really not that interesting. They're just doing what they always do, working around an absolutely horrible cap situation,
right?
Losing some veterans because of it, but still somehow signing guys. They do it every year. You're like, they just lost those 4 guys because they couldn't afford them, and then the next thing they turn around and they did it recently. Who did they sign? They signed somebody significant.
Yes, but dollar-wise, you mean? Or as a player-wise?
Pretty. I'm going to go look it up.
Yeah, it was a pretty good deal.
It was. I don't know what the deal was, but I remember it was a pretty high profile.
Well, they went all in
player.
on Carr, which very, very expensive. I mean, that was $40 or $60 million a year, something crazy like that.
60 seems high, but it was definitely big.
Yeah.
I'm looking at their transactions. They re-signed Demario Davis, so that's good for them. Mm-hmm. They re-signed Tyrann Mathieu. Their transactions aren't updated here. Okay. I can't think of who it was. Somebody's probably screaming at the podcast right now.
That's all right. That's good when they do that. It didn't know them, seriously, because that means they're totally involved and excited about being here with us.
Yeah, but I should be able to remember the name of their recently.
I am having a hard time remembering what I ate for lunch, and that was only like 20 minutes ago. So,
they did sign
who?
Nathan Peterman.
Really?
Oh, they got Chase Young.
Oh, Chase Young. There you go.
Like, how do they afford Chase Young?
Well, because Chase Young's been struggling. He was with Washington, then he goes to San Francisco, and San Francisco letting him go because, I don't.
Did they let him go, or did his contract?
His contract was up, but they didn't actually step up and say, "Hey, we need you." So, is this a prove it type contract for Chase Young? It's a big name.
1 year. It is a. Usually you talk about a prove it deal being like Baker's last year. 1 year and relatively low for the position, like 4. Theirs is 1 year, $13 million, fully guaranteed.
Wow, that's pretty good.
It's a good deal for him to get that much, and also if he can prove that he's the player everybody thought he was a couple of years ago, he'll be right back on the free agent market and get a lucrative free. So it's probably a great idea.
Yeah, it's worth the gambles. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there, we talked about the Saints.
There we go.
Okay, what's the other big development since the last time we talked? Overall,
we're building a new studio. Oh, I'm sorry.
all the rule changes.
Oh, yes. Special
Let's talk
teams.
about some of them.
Okay, let's go. Which one do you want to start?
Let's not. Okay,
Special teams. Go ahead.
I'm going to lay out the new kickoff return rule, but let's not get deep into it because we're going to talk to Coach McGaughey about that. But the new rule is the kicker still kicks from the 35, but he's alone there. Mm-hmm. The rest of the coverage team has to have a foot on the return team's 40-yard line. Mm-hmm. At least 9 of the blockers for the return team have to have a foot on their 35-yard line, so 5-yard support. And then you can put either 1 or 2 return men in the what they call the landing zone, which is the goal line to the 20.
Right.
The goal is to kick the ball into the landing zone so that it's caught or hits the ground there, because then it has to be returned. All players standing on the 35 and the 40 can't move until the ball is caught or hits the ground.
Right.
So they're only 5 yards apart. So the point is what they've been trying to do for years is get out the violent collisions.
Sure.
Full speed, you've been running down the field for 40 yards, violent collisions, because the play was shown to have a high rate of injury, and it was a player safety issue.
Sure.
But in the process of doing so with all the different rule changes, they basically neutered the play to the point where last year, by far, the NFL had the fewest kickoff returns and the fewest kickoff return touchdowns, only 4 in the entire league last year that they've ever had in a season. Mm-hmm. So basically the play was being taken out of the game. Either you could let that continue to happen and just say, we're just not going to have that play anymore, or you can say that play is an important and fun part of football. We have to figure out a way to keep it in the game. Right. So they went that way, but then we also have to keep it safe. And so they borrowed from the XFL thing that they used to do, but notably are not doing anymore. And sorry, I clicked my pen. If the ball lands if the ball hits the ground before the landing zone, it's considered the same penalty as if it goes out of bounds.
And again, the landing zone is
the goal line to the 20,
side to side. It's not like a little,
no.
It's not like a bullseye.
The whole field.
Okay,
that would be kind of difficult.
Well, I'm just, I'm trying to clarify for everyone.
If it hits the ground before it gets there, that's a touchback, and it comes all the way out to the 40. Actually, it's a penalty essentially. It's the same penalty as if the ball goes out of bounds. If the ball flies all the way to the end zone and is either caught or lands there, or goes out of the back of the end zone, that's a touchback like it used to be, but it comes out to the 30. Wow. That was a last-minute change. They were going to make it the 35, so that's pretty punitive.
Yeah.
If the ball lands in the landing zone on the ground and bounces into the end zone for a touchback, the ball only comes out to the 20. Wow. So there's a lot of different potential outcomes. But if it lands if you field the ball in the landing zone, you have to return it. Mm-hmm. You can't fair catch.
Right.
So
right. It'll be very interesting to see what
I think it's going to be crazy. Uh-huh. I think there's going to be wild differences between how good some teams are at this and others.
Yeah, I think it's going to be those who are adapting the quickest.
And coaching is going to be very important, so it makes a lot of sense that we're going to be talking to our new special teams coordinator here in a few minutes.
I'm looking forward to that.
Okay, another one is they banned the hip drop swivel tackle.
Yeah, interesting. Todd Bowles said he didn't really he didn't think it was going to bother this football team because they don't tackle that way. I don't know really. I'm not really sure how it's going to. How it's going to be officiated or how they're going to police it. I don't know.
I have an opinion of how it's going to be.
Oh, you think? Oh,
okay. This is my prediction.
Okay.
And a lot of people are comparing it to when they made the horse collar tackle illegal, and how it went down then. I think a better comparison to what I think is going to happen is a few years back, it wasn't even a new rule, but they had the refs emphasize the part of the roughing the passer rule where you're not allowed to land on them with your full body weight.
Okay. I see what you're saying.
There's a whole bunch of ways that you can get called for roughing the passer, as we've seen, and it's frustrating.
Very.
But one of them is if you sack him and in the process land on top of him with your full body weight.
Yeah.
Well, the year they decided to emphasize that, the refs went nuts with those calls in the first 5 or 6 weeks. I clearly remember that it kept happening to the Packers over and over again.
Right.
And it was driving fans nuts because you'd see the replay and sometimes it looked right and sometimes you're like, come on, how is that a penalty?
Right.
And I believe it's around that time that I personally started on my own crusade, which I've mentioned several times, that if I were allowed to make the rules, one of them would be to make roughing the passer a challengeable call.
Right.
and let them review it. But that hasn't happened. So anyway, I think it'll go down the same way with the hip drop swivel tackle ban, in that you're going to see a lot of flags early on. And then, it's going to happen when you can see that, right? It's it's not hard to see it. And then the player it looks like the player's hurt, that flag's coming out.
Yeah.
And so I think there'll be a rash of it. People will get used to it. They'll stop calling it so frequently, and it'll all smooth out, and we'll be fine.
Yeah.
But it's going to be chaos early on.
I think that's a great prediction.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
See if I'm right.
We'll find out. I'll hold you to it, as you well know.
Well, one little common sense change they made, I think it's a bylaw, not a rule.
Mm-hmm.
You know how if you want to put if you're in training camp and a guy gets hurt and you want to put him on injury reserve, if you put him on injury reserve before you cut to 53, his season's over. He can't come back. For you to be able to designate for return a guy who you put on IR and hopefully get him back during that season, he has to spend at least one day on the 53-man roster.
Okay.
So you had to jump through hoops.
Right.
Like Ryan Jensen gets hurt.
Right.
Not this year, but the previous
year, yeah, I remember.
You hope he can come back. So you have to keep him on your 53.
Right.
Cut somebody else you actually want.
And hopefully.
Wait a day.
Yeah, hopefully you get him back.
Yeah, and just hope that you get him back. Then put the guy on IR and then bring the other guy back.
Right.
They made the common sense move, in my opinion, to give you two spots where you can put that guy on injury reserve the day that the cuts are going to be made. So like before the cuts to 53.
Right.
And that guy, those two guys can be designated to return. And you usually don't need more than one anyway.
Right.
So I think it's a good rule.
Yeah, that's good. That's good.
I think they added two things that can be reviewed are intentional grounding and for the pitcher. So for the pitcher, I got baseball in the mind because it just started.
I know.
And the Cardinals had a big comeback win over the Marlins, who I think are 0-8.
Yeah,
maybe?
they are.
Not a good start for the Marlins. And their shining star young pitcher just is going to get Tommy John, Yuri Perez.
They're just in great shape.
Why are we talking about the Marlins? I do not know.
Your mind wanders.
So the quarterback, is he out of the pocket? Did he get the ball back to the line of scrimmage? You can review those parts of it.
I like that.
Okay, good.
I like that.
What else? Oh, the 2 challenge rule.
I like that also.
So previously, a coach starts a game with 2 challenges, but he gets a 3rd challenge if he
gets the first
uses
one
the first 2 and gets them both right.
Right.
Detroit proposed that the coach would only have to get one of his first 2 challenges right to retain his 3rd, and that passed.
Yes. So it makes it you're not thinking as much. If I'm wrong, I'm going to lose something for a later game.
You know how many times in his entire 6-year head coaching career Todd Bowles has thrown 2 challenge flags in the same game? Once.
Really?
He threw the challenge flag 4 times last year. It's just not going to have that big of an impact.
But it's there if you.
There were 7 games in the entire NFL last year where that rule would have made a difference. 7 games in which
out of
there's 272. Isn't it 272? 17 times 16.
Yeah, something
is that right?
Like that.
272, I think. And that's not even counting playoffs. 272. No, wait. I'm starting at the end.
Well,
16 times
16
17,
times 10 would be
270. There's 272 regular season games, but there's 2 head coaches in each one, so double it.
Oh yeah.
So it's 544 opportunities, and this is just regular season.
And only 7 times.
And only 7 times did the coach throw both challenge flags and only get one of them right.
So why are we even bothering looking at this rule?
Got me. It was Detroit that cared, and everybody's like, okay, whatever.
Okay. Well, Detroit's the new Lucky Charm.
Yeah, everybody loves Detroit right now.
So we'll go with that.
You remember any of the other rules?
Do I what?
Do you remember any of the other new rules?
No. What I do is I get to the rules come training camp when they have the officials come down, and we sit down with them and go over all of them. What do you got? What else is there? Well, you went to the owners' meeting.
Yeah, but I was back by the time they announced.
Would you just go for a day?
I went up there and spent the night because the stuff was early in the morning. So I was there for Jason Light and Todd Bowles' interviews, and then I came back the next day.
Yeah, I did bad timing. I took vacation.
Yeah, so you can include a ruling of passer down by contact or out of bounds before throwing a pass as a reviewable play. So I think I might have gotten that last one wrong. Maybe it's not grounding, but was he down or not?
Okay.
You can review if there's obvious evidence that if the clock ran down to 0 and it should have been a delay of game. The hip drop rule is out. Yep. Oh, and by the way, this new kickoff rule is one of those where they pass it for 1 year.
Yeah. Well, they want to see how it plays out, and I like that.
Yeah, they did the same thing with the being able to challenge pass interference. That was an utter disaster, so they said, no, we're not going to continue that.
I do like the fact of let's not make it a rule. Let's try it out.
So it will have to be voted on again next year no matter what happens. But if it goes well, then it will probably be made permanent.
Yeah.
Although no rule is ever permanent, as we've seen.
Rules are made to be broken. Okay.
There's other one that I don't even know. It's like to allow for an enforcement of a major foul by the offense prior to a change of possession in a situation where there are fouls by both teams. So I guess if somebody on the offense committed a personal foul, but there was also, say, defensive holding prior to a change of possession. I don't even get that one. Some of these rules, only the rest need to know. I don't even understand what that means.
But that's part of the, they do all of this. That's why I like to sit with the officials when they come here, and then they sit down and explain it, and then you get a better, more of a usage explanation.
Well, they also sometimes have things to tell you that aren't just
in words
that aren't just new rules, but are points of emphasis, and that's always important to find out.
Right.
That we're going to emphasize this year, roughing the pass or whatever.
Yep. Very good.
Well, like you said, this is an abbreviated one.
Actually, it's not going to be, but it's okay.
Well, we've done our part.
We just burned through 30 minutes.
Okay.
But there is a lot to talk about with our free agency signing, with the rule changes. It's off-season. We're 20 days away from the draft, so that'll be fun.
The one thing we're not going to do is talk about the draft, you and me.
No.
I'm going to talk to Bree a little bit about it, as I mentioned before. And hopefully, this is not set in stone yet, but didn't we kind of want to do another mashup with a mock draft?
Yeah, probably depending on how the draft goes and how everything else comes together.
No, the week of the draft, like we did last year.
The week of the draft.
Brianna and Casey join us, and we do a mock draft, alternating picks.
Oh, that's right. We did that last year.
We liked that last year, and I think they want to do it again. So
all right.
We may have one more. I'm not going to promise, but since it's a decent chance we will, we didn't have any mailbag questions this week because nobody knew we were going to be doing this one. That's why I'm talking to Bree for the third segment. Right. But email us anything, questions or comments, or what you think about the draft, or these signings we've just had, or the rule changes, anything you need clarified, or you just want our opinions on, or you want to share your opinion. And so then we can get to that in the last segment in our next one. So if you want to email us questions, it's at the email address is saltydogs@buccaneers.nfl.com.
Cool. All right, you're going to run down the hall?
Yep, I'll go get the coach.
All right, what coach are we getting?
Special teams coordinator, Thomas McGaughey.
The Salty Dogs.
And we're back here on the Salty Dogs podcast. I'm Scott Smith.
And I am Jeff Ryan.
And this is a very special edition of the podcast because we're very excited to have with us a guest today, and that is the Buccaneers' new special teams coordinator, Thomas McGaughey. Thomas, welcome to Tampa, welcome to the Bucs, and most importantly, welcome to this podcast.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate you having me today.
I was just asking you as we walked over how you're getting acclimated to the move and coming down here.
It's definitely a little different than New Jersey.
Considering New Jersey, New York had an earthquake today.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Crazy, right?
Yeah. I'm glad I'm here.
Oh, well. Wait until hurricane season comes.
Yeah,
well,
you're a few months.
I'm from Houston, so
there you go.
All about that.
Trust me, I know all about the hurricanes, but it's been nice.
Well, you come to us from the Giants most recently, but obviously you've had a long career coaching, especially mostly special teams, both in college and the pros. And so I wanted to ask you about that. It looks to here, and correct me if I'm wrong, that you got started after you had a bit of a playing career. You even won you got to play in Barcelona, right?
Yeah.
That sounds like
World
fun.
Bowl 1997.
Was it fun living in Barcelona?
It was awesome. It was probably one of the best experiences of my life. Being over there and just seeing a different culture and being a rock's throw away from the Mediterranean, staying in a little town called Sitges, right outside of Barcelona. Yeah. It was beautiful.
I can spell it. I never knew how to pronounce that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But it looks like you started your coaching career not long after you were done playing.
Yep.
And
right
just wondered why. And you went to Houston first, and then got the Bill Walsh Minority Fellowship with the Chiefs. Why did you end up focusing on special teams?
When I came into high school, I was highly recruited as a wide receiver, and after my freshman year, my position was switched because of injury, and we had a bunch of guys flunk out of school, and I was the only guy on the offensive side that was athletic enough to play to make the switch. So they did it, and basically in a need, to fill for the team. So I did that, but I was also a long snapper.
No kidding.
There you go.
That's not a normal combination.
No, I was literally the black unicorn.
One way or another, you were going to make the team.
Yeah, exactly. So,
Dave Moore method.
So my freshman year, they switched my redshirt freshman year. They switched me to defense, but I was the long snapper. So my next 3 years there at the University of Houston, I was a long snapper, and I started at safety. So that's kind of how I fell into it.
Okay.
And I just had a love for special teams. And my special teams coach in college was Frank Gans Jr., and his dad was, the legendary special teams coach in the NFL, and was actually the very first special teams coordinator to ever go from special teams coordinator to head coach.
Oh, wow.
So John Harbaugh.
Yeah. So, and actually, John went from special teams to defense.
Oh, I didn't
then
know
head
that.
coach.
Okay.
Yeah. So,
Okay, Rich beside you.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep. So that's kind of why I got into it. I just had a love for it, and and I was a defensive guy by trade. I coached DBs for a little bit. But when I went into the NFL, that was my avenue, and that's kind of the lane I took.
Worked out pretty well.
Yeah,
I would say so.
Yeah.
Here you are with Tampa Bay. You've been in the NFC South before because you were with the Panthers. Mm-hmm. But as you look at this Tampa Bay Buccaneer team, how do you now begin to process what your special teams are going to look like?
I have a basic premise on how I'd like things to look. We're in the process of, adding and subtracting, with the draft and all that good stuff. I mean, it's free agency and everything that comes along with that. Keith Armstrong was one of my great mentors in this league. And, to be able to come behind him and knowing that they've had a really good foundation and me learning a lot of things from Keith.
Oh, wow.
And being able to kind of put my own little spin on it and just be myself. But obviously there's some things that we want to do that's going to be a little different, but not too far off of it. Just, we got to find a way to make plays, get more athletic, and help our team play complementary football, not just kind of transition from one phase to the next, have a real impact on the game.
Speaking of Keith's, how helpful is it to have Keith handy, staying on and working with you?
It's awesome. Keith's a great dude.
Smart guy.
Works his tail off, and he's played in the league. The guys love him, and he understands it. Like it's a, playing defense and then also being a special teams captain and understanding what entails that job and being able to communicate with the players effectively. It's that goes without saying.
Did you get a new sign, or did you bring your sign from the Giants that is "Do Simple Better"? What did you do?
Yeah, I'm getting a new sign.
Okay,
it's just going to change the colors.
Yeah. Hey, explain the "Do Simple Better."
Is that a motto?
Yes.
Yeah. To me, it's the old John Wooden, don't mistake activity for achievement. And to me, repetition deepens the impression. So the more you do it, the better you get at it. And I think, and I tell the guys all the time, a rep doesn't care what happens to it. Either it's good or it's bad, but the rep's going to be driven in. So we want to make sure we keep it as simple as we can and just repeat that process over and over and over and over and over again, and just keep it simple, because in our phase, it's always constant change. That's the only thing that we have that's consistent. So if I have these big elaborate schemes and it's all of these intricate details and it's this check and that check and then I got to get a guy, somebody taps me on the shoulder, Todd gets, hey, look, on Friday, he's like, yeah, I get this guy ready to play Sunday. Well, we only got a walkthrough.
Yeah.
Right.
And we got 6 different phases this guy might have to play.
Yeah.
So we got to get him ready. So if it's all of this elaborate detail in what you're doing, you can't make those types of adjustments. So what I try and do as a coordinator is get really good at the things that we do well and just keep it simple so the guys can play fast and play physical.
You talked about, obviously, the roster still being put together and you're still finding out about guys, but you did inherit what looks like a pretty good kicking duo. I mean, Jake Camarda has a cannon for a leg, and Chase McLaughlin was nearly perfect last year, set a bunch of Bucs records. So it's got to feel good to inherit those two guys now.
Yeah,
that's set.
Yeah, that's never that never sucked, you know. When you get good players, you know, that's never a bad thing. I had a conversation with Chase. He came up, signed his contract, and we kind of go back a little bit. He's a Cy-Fair ISD kid, just like myself, from Houston. So he grew up in the same school district that I went to. Now, obviously, it was 30 years ago, but I'm always partial to those kind of guys. And then Jake we hadn't spoken yet, but when he came out. I was really high on him, and he's very talented.
Yeah.
And I think there's some things that he can do to get better.
Good.
And can't wait to work with him.
All right, I have to admit, this is the number one thing I was hoping to talk to you about. The kickoff rule change. Rule changes in the NFL are usually more like incremental. Like, okay, now we'll allow you to challenge intentional grounding.
Yeah.
It doesn't happen very often that you take an entire play that's been in the NFL for 100 years and just make it something completely different. So, do you think people I don't want you to give away strategy, but how hard is it to figure out the strategy? Is it going to be tough for every coordinator around the league, and is that a big part of what you're doing right now?
Yeah, this is uncharted territory, and I think more than anything, we're all trying to feel our way through it. Personnel-wise, on the kickoff team, what kind of personnel do you use? Do you use bigger bodies? Do you use smaller bodies? Kickoff return-wise, can you put a bigger body in there at the point of attack? Can you get away with maybe putting a couple defensive linemen in there, maybe an offensive lineman, maybe not? Is it inside-outside zone? Is it a double scheme at the point of attack? Is it double and trap? If it, you're trying to figure out all these different things. Is it an old school power play where you got a lead blocker and a puller and it could be. You could see anything.
Are you even going to have the answer to these questions until you get on the field? Though?
You won't. No. You won't have any. You won't have any of the answers until you see, because it's all about matching schemes. So, as a kickoff coverage team, you got to figure out what they're doing as a return unit, how the personnel, schematically, what they're doing. Who they have back there running. Is it a little guy? Is it a fast guy? Is it a big, strong, physical guy?
And you don't even have tape to work with.
You have no idea.
What about the kick? Wait, what about the kick itself? Because it seems like there's so many different. If it lands here, it goes out to the 20. If it lands, it sounded to me like the best possible outcome would be the ball skips in the landing zone and goes into the end zone. Because then it comes out to the 20, right?
Yeah,
is that hard to do though?
Yeah, that's almost impossible to do. Yeah, and you take a chance on, miss hitting the ball, and it could get ugly.
Yeah, okay.
It could get ugly, but. I think it's just going to be one of those deals where each week people are just trying to figure it out.
Wow.
And it's going to be a little different.
Yeah.
It's going to be a little different, but I think it's going to be good for the game because it makes the play relevant again. We had the last year with the, however many 1,900 plays or whatever it was, and, it looked bad.
There were 4 touchdowns.
Yeah, I mean, it just – it could go from like 3 or 4 now to 14.
I know. That's what I was thinking.
So it's a real play now. And you have opportunities for the core guys to make plays. So you guys that are running down and making tackles, instead of making 8-9 tackles in a year, they could make 25, which makes them more valuable.
Yeah.
So I think it's good overall for the game just to make it a real play again.
I feel like it could end up being a major advantage in a team versus team matchup if one has it figured out a lot better than the other one.
Absolutely.
Well, Jeff, we've had him here for 10, so I got one more.
Yeah. Is it going to change what's more important, your punt returner or your kickoff returner?
I think they're equally going to be is important because, I mean, first of all, obviously as a kickoff return, because you're going to have more reps at it. So it's going to be a real play. So you got to have a real guy back there. And then as a punt returner, if you don't have a good punt returner, you're in trouble. If you don't get a guy that can feel the ball and if it's backed up and you get an opportunity to return the ball and create some good field position. So I think overall it's just going to help the whole premise and really solidify special teams as being something that's extremely important and that plays not only everybody you talk about the 3 phases and playing complementary football. No, it's a real deal now. Like you really have to set your personnel. You have to make sure you're paying attention to it because if you don't, it'll show up on game day.
Wow. Just hearing this has now got me excited about seeing how this is going to play out.
Yeah, it's going to be a little
You might
different.
need more returners too, right? Because
Yeah.
you can put 2 back at once if you want
Absolutely.
to.
Wow, look at you all of a sudden designing.
Absolutely.
I didn't say what to do with them, just that. 2 of them.
Just in case you want to use it, go ahead, Thomas. It's okay.
We're already on it.
Yeah. Well, you're right. It has made special teams even more important. I guess that's probably why the Bucs did such an exhaustive search that led to your hiring. So we appreciate your time. We're glad you're here with us.
Yeah, and we want,
you guys.
and about mid-season, we want to bring you back. No, seriously.
Say, what happened?
And say, how's this been playing out
Absolutely.
and how's it go?
Yeah, anytime.
Okay.
Especially if we're kicking ass at it.
Well, no question, we are. Thank you, Thomas.
thank you.
Appreciate you guys.
Your time.
The Salty Dogs.
And we're back one more time here on the Salty Dogs podcast. I'm Scott Smith, and Jeff Ryan is here, but just as serving as a producer for this segment because Brianna's here, Brianna Dix, team writer, reporter. Because Brianna and I are going to talk about the draft a little bit, and we're going to use the words mock draft a couple times, and Jeff doesn't like that. So it's kind of like a silent protest, but he is the brains behind this organization, so he's got us all set up so we can roll. So it's you and me, Bri.
Yep.
We're going to talk about the draft a little bit because our third segment is usually for questions from fans, and because we kind of threw this one out there without anybody knowing, we didn't have any questions, so I brought you in instead. So you and I have both been, this offseason, going through the process of doing mock drafts.
Yes.
Which also involves a lot of reading of mock drafts and reviewing other people's mock drafts and so on.
Yes.
So I wanted to get your thoughts, having done 3 or 4 of these. 4 at this point, I think.
Oh, yes.
Several.
Several.
One of which was an all Bucs draft where you picked every round.
Yes.
And one we kind of collaborated on. But you have done your own, and you're doing one right now, I believe.
Yes.
So you're in the thick of it. So let me just get some of your impressions from this process so far. First of all, have you honed in on any particular players? Well, what have you learned? I guess I'd start this way. What have you learned about what the media as a whole, draft analysts, think the Bucs are going to do at pick number 26?
Really, and I haven't started really digging in for this week on those, but as of last week, kind of the overall consensus was that the Bucs are going to take an edge rusher at pick 26. Both Penn State's Chop Robinson and then Florida State's Jared Verse have kind of been invariably linked to the Bucs with that 26th overall pick. There's been a little bit of cornerback and interior offensive line kind of intermittently placed throughout. But then again, you think back to last year, and very few people, if any, had Kalijah Cansey mocked to the Bucs in the first round. So, all projections, all subjective. But as of last week, and the Bucs did add veteran outside linebacker Randy Gregory to the mix to add depth. But as of last week, edge rusher was kind of the basis there.
Do you think if you look at the moves that Jason Light and his crew have made in free agency, in bringing in outside guys, not re-signing all of our guys, because obviously that was the number one priority, but, a couple guards, a couple cornerbacks,
right,
and now Randy Gregory, it either puts them in a position to go in any direction they want to, like they're not tied into a specific need,
right,
or at least it creates the illusion of so. Which one do you think it is?
I think it puts them in the best position to succeed in the draft because, you don't feel like you're pigeonholed. You're going in with a certain, now you can take the best player available, kind of how the boards work out. If there's a guy that you're kind of fixated on, they may end up moving up a little bit to try and get whoever that is. Or if they're liking the guys that are falling, you stay at 26. But having those guys, having a little bit more depth, I think frees you up to take really whoever you want to in the first round.
Before the signing of the two guards, Ben Bredeson and Sua Opeta, I felt like it was a very popular pick. And I'm looking at this file I've made where I've been tracking different mock drafts since February. And I do see a lot, like if I just go from the bottom here, it's cornerback, cornerback, edge, edge, cornerback, edge, cornerback, edge, cornerback, wide receiver, edge, 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 cornerback. So they do seem to be honing into those two categories. But before that, there was a lot of interior offensive linemen, in particular Graham Barton from Duke a lot. And every now and then, if you made it, Jackson Powers Johnson from Oregon. Do you still think that's a possibility for the Bucs at 26?
I do. Like you said, I think cornerback has really picked up steam over the last, I would say, 2 weeks. Like I think Nate Wiggins has kind of become a popular choice for the Bucs, and even for which then again you have to kind of take that with a grain of salt because the Bucs didn't even bring in Kalijah Cansey last year for the day 30 visits, but they did bring in Kool-Aid McKinstry. They did bring in some cornerbacks for that as well. But yeah, I think interior offensive line hasn't exactly been as popular as of late, but yet with the departure of Aaron Stinney and Nick Leverett, and I kind of take the same philosophy with that with edge rushers. I don't really think you can have too many, with the kind of the shuffles and injuries that you take as the season progresses. So
yeah,
I would definitely still be happy with an interior offensive line in the first round.
Chances, but out of 100%, chances that the Buccaneers completely surprise us and don't take a guard or an edge or a corner or a receiver. What do you think?
I would say that's very slim.
Very slim. So you really think it's going to be one of those positions?
I do.
And wide receiver, do you agree that that's one that
yes.
would be
Well,
in that group?
And even Jason Light has said several times that this is a very wide receiver deep class as well as offensive tackle. So I wouldn't be surprised to see, especially on maybe day 2 and round 2 or 3, taking a receiver.
Yeah, I agree with
that. To add to the room.
I think that's a really good idea. As you've gone through this process, you've looked at what other people thought. You've had your own thoughts. I think I know you've given us Graham Barton at least one time.
Yes.
Probably Chop Robinson one time. I think. Have you honed in on any player that if you or if the Bucs make this pick, you're going to be really happy?
Yes. So I have a few in the first round.
Okay.
And then I have a guy that I am a big fan of potentially for a second round. But for the first round, kind of along with everybody else, I really like Jared Verse. And then you kind of got me hooked on Leatu Latu.
You said you went down a rabbit hole.
Yes. Or Graham Barton. But Verse, he's really kind of one of the most naturally explosive guys of the class. Has a rare get off, high level closing speed to collapse the pocket. I think he would fit well in Todd Bowles' attack, kind of that penetrating base system. And then Latu is regarded as one of the most gifted pass rushers of the bunch. I think teams are going to have to do their due diligence on him with the medical, with the neck injury background. But he's a guy that I think has immense potential and a person that when he already has that vast array of moves coming in for a rookie, I think he's a guy that could really boost the Bucs pass rush and just kind of the way that he's able to set up blockers. And then Barton just brings incredible flexibility. He's played tackle, guard, center, smooth and pass pro, kind of has that athleticism and the lateral agility for move blocking duties that the Bucs look for, and can kind of plug and play at multiple spots. So I think he's a person that could help fill that vacancy at left guard. And then kind of as you go down the line, a person that if the Bucs go offensive line or kind of an outlier for the first round, there's an edge that I am really high on. I know the Bucs haven't traditionally taken Penn State guys. Props to Chris Godwin. But it's Penn State's Adisa Isaac. If he falls to them in the second round, I just think he fits that Bucs mold. He's a bendy pass rusher. He can play in a 4-3, a 3-4, impressive with his counters. But I think this organization places a really high importance on getting guys that have a really high character. And our front office, and our front office has talked a lot about getting players that have been through adversity, because it's not a matter of if you're going to face it in the NFL, it's when. And so for people that have gone through it and then come out on the other side, and he suffered a torn Achilles heading into the 2021 season, which could have derailed his career. And then he came back stronger and finished with better production than even his line mate, Chop Robinson.
Right.
But he also helped take care of his 3 siblings that are nonverbal. And I think he's just,
My goodness.
And I think that's a player that would bring a lot, would be a culture fit here, and is just kind of an easy guy to root for that has the production, but also is just a person that's good teammate, high character, that would kind of fit that mold that Jason Light and Co. like here.
Yeah, I like it. You talked about overcoming adversity. I mean, you mentioned it, and you kind of gave away that I was talking about him, but Leatu Latu is the guy that I would love to see the Bucs get at 26, and he actually was medically retired from football because of that neck injury at one point. So to come back from that and get cleared and still have the love for the game and want to come back, right? To want to come back. And maybe that neck injury and the history of injury is the reason why he could possibly fall into a range where the Bucs could get him. And like you said, that could be all the way at 26, or Jason Light has never been shy if a guy's falling a little bit and getting close to where he wants, that he'll make a little move. And he mentioned that the Carlton Davis trade got them that extra third-round pick, and he thinks that's going to really help them get some more youth to the team. But he said either we use it or we use it as ammo to move around.
Right.
So that's not out of the question. I love the guy. To me, when you're choosing between all these edge rushers, I like the guy with the production.
Yeah.
You know, I think it's possible that all these guys, Chop Robinson and Jared Verse, and he probably won't get there, but Dallas Turner can be really productive guys, and a lot of them have tests through the roof, like Chop Robinson, and that's great. And so if we end up with any of those, it's probably a good thing. But the guy that I really like is Latu, just because he has that production already.
Right.
He's really shown he can do it, and I think it'll translate to the NFL. So that's my vote. Of course, all the other teams in front of us have to cooperate for that to happen. All right, outside of the Buccaneers, when you're doing a mock draft, you don't get to just pick for the Bucs unless you do that all Bucs one.
Right.
Obviously, the really intriguing part about this draft is the quarterbacks. How many will go in the top 5 or 10? What order are they going to go in? I think everybody is pretty much set on the Bears taking Caleb Williams at this point.
Yeah.
I don't think there's a lot of mystery there. How do you think, from everything you've seen, just take a stab at how it's going to go for, let's say, Drake May, Jaden Daniels, J.J. McCarthy, and maybe even Michael Penix and Bo Nix?
Well, I personally am not as high on Drake May. So for me, Jaden Daniels seems the most plausible for the Commanders at 2. And he has kind of the best mobility of the bunch in this class.
Maybe too much. I mean, he takes off and runs all the time.
True. But he's, big play threat, burst on the move, kind of that long strided speed. And he has the best tape of the 2023 season, can kind of adjust the velocity, trajectory of his throws, fast throwing motion. And then 3, even though I'm not as high on him and he's kind of the toughest evaluation, I think Drake May kind of makes a lot of sense for the Pats. He's kind of that big-bodied quarterback, but he has a lot of mechanical flaws in his footwork, kind of the inconsistency there, longer throwing motion, which can lead to hits and sacks. But good touch thrower, capable scrambler. And then I think the Vikings could end up being a team to trade up to that number 3 spot if they want to grab May or J.J. McCarthy. Several analysts have kind of mocked the Vikings moving up after moving on from Kirk Cousins to kind of add a rookie to the room with Sam Darnold. But J.J. McCarthy is the guy, mechanically tight passer, hits receivers in stride. However, there's kind of a caveat with him, too, kind of in that Michigan offense. He was often relegated behind the run game in their system and the team didn't have to rally on him to win the games. He threw about 20 to 25 times. But that's kind of the way.
Not even that many in the championship.
Right. So that's kind of the way that I see that shaking out.
If 2 follow-ups.
Okay.
Let's say take the Vikings or any other trade off the table, and the first 3 go the way you said. What's the farthest that McCarthy could fall? He's probably not going to the Cardinals at 4, right?
Right.
They have Kyler Murray and they need a receiver. So then 5 is San Diego or the Chargers of Los Angeles. I will be saying that to the end of the time.
Oh, I know. I do sometimes too.
then you got the Chargers, you got the Giants, you got the Titans, at 8 Atlanta, 9 Chicago, 10 the Jets. I mean, it does not look to me like obviously the Chargers aren't. The Giants could be. Tennessee's probably going to go with Will Levis. Atlanta just got Kirk Cousins. Chicago will have drafted Caleb Williams. The Jets have Aaron Rodgers. And then you're at 11 with Minnesota. I mean, any chance Minnesota could just stay put and get J.J. McCarthy?
I think they could, yeah. And if they think he's available or they're sure that the Pats are taking Drake May and they want McCarthy, then I think they definitely stay.
Yeah, the problem, though, is you're not just factoring in what the teams ahead of you need, but every possible team that could trade and jump you.
Right.
So while it would be a dream for the Vikings probably if they could just stay at 11 and then keep that number 23 pick, I feel like they're going to believe they have to trade up to either maybe the Chargers after Arizona takes a receiver, maybe the Chargers who can afford to move down and take like an offensive lineman because there's a million of those in this draft. So that's my thought. And
See, it's definitely a gamble.
you are doing your last mock draft before the real thing this week, and then I'll do my last one next week. And so we'll see who's closer to the mark because I think Washington in the end will go with Drake May. And I know there's
Interesting. Okay.
I know there's some erraticism to his game, but he's got the size and the arm talent and touch, and he actually is a fairly mobile guy too. And Jaden Daniels, what worries me is he's fantastic. And honestly, I've talked to some guys on staff here and so on, how much fun it would be to have a quarterback like that. Because Buccaneers haven't really had that, a quarterback that can really add something with his legs.
Right.
And that's such a difference maker in today's NFL. But he's not a big guy.
Right.
I know Lamar Jackson isn't that big of a guy either, but he's not a big guy, and he takes a lot of hits.
Right.
And he runs at and maybe this could be coached out of him, but you don't want to completely coach it out of him, right? It just worries me a little bit. I would say Caleb Williams, Drake May to Washington, although if they do take Daniels, then I think New England sprints to take. I think he's their type of quarterback. They'd love to have Drake May. But I'm going to say Drake May 2, Daniels 3, and then McCarthy probably goes, say, 5 to the Chargers.
Okay.
In that spot after the Vikings trade up. Do you think
Gotcha.
Do you think that Penix or Bo Nix could go in the first round?
I think they could. I don't think it's as popular. You don't see them going. I think I've seen Nix recently going in the first round. But then again, when are these ever correct? And when does anyone ever hit the mark?
Yeah.
I mean, if you get, maybe 3 correct or any of that, it's like you're feeling pretty good.
Yeah. You randomly get number 24 right.
Because even I feel like predominantly you have sort of a consensus, at least the way the first, 5 are going to go. But even this year, there's so much debate, even with the way the quarterbacks are going to go. So I think at this point, it's kind of a crapshoot any way you look at it.
I've often said that, when it comes down to it, the quarterbacks always rise. But then again, a couple of years ago, it didn't. When Malik Willis went in the 3rd round and everybody was mocking him like 5th overall that year, and the guy Kenny Pickens who went to Pittsburgh, but they didn't even have to move up. He was the only 1st-round pick. So maybe that old saw isn't as true as it used to be, but it always generally used to feel like if you thought the quarterbacks were going to go 3 in the top 15, they're actually going to go 3 in the top 10, right? Or something like that.
Right.
But I think I've mocked Penix to the Raiders a couple times.
Okay.
I don't think anybody's going to trade up for Penix or Nix.
Right.
I could see both of them going in the first round. If either of the two go, I would suspect it would be Penix. But, yeah, there's a good chance that neither of them do.
Right.
All right. Next topic. If you had to predict what the Bucs will do on the first 2 days, what positions do you think they're most likely to target with their 4 picks? And I know you've said 4 positions for the first-round pick, but maybe that's not true when we talk about all 4 picks. The one in the second round, I think, is 57, and then 89 and 92 in the 3rd round. You don't have to say particular players. Just if you come away with 4 different positions from those 4, what are they going to be?
For the 4, I would say bolstering the trenches, so edge, interior offensive line. And then I would say either in kind of any of these 3, I would say cornerback, linebacker, or receiver could also be in the mix with the departure of Carlton Davis with Devin White. I think really any of those, if you get them in the top 4, you're in a good spot.
If Casey were here, she'd be predicting that what I'm about to say, which is you can never have enough good cornerbacks.
Yes.
You can always draft cornerbacks.
Yes.
They will play.
And the injury history
They will play.
that we've had, it's good to have some depth.
Yeah, and Jason Light has a good track record of second and third round cornerbacks.
Yes.
Like Jamel Dean and Carlton Davis, as a matter of fact.
Right.
You mentioned 5 positions there. 4 of them were the 4 that you said you thought most likely the Bucs would do in the first round, and then you added linebacker. And I will throw in one more, running back, as a possibility, because it looks like linebacker and running back are not top-heavy positions this year. Like, there might not be any at either position to go in the first round. But then there's some depth. And Jason Light actually said at the Combine when he was asked what the deep positions were in the draft, and you mentioned, he said offensive linemen, guards, and all offensive linemen, actually. There's tons of tackles, and wide receiver. But then he also said running back, which struck me a little strange at the time. But I guess what he means is once you get out of the first round and you're in this,
there's some good.
You're going to be able to get some second, third, maybe fourth or fifth round. So the Bucs could use some depth there. Rashad White is an ascending player. He's your starting back for sure. But maybe some kind of change of pace or some different sort of back to add to the mix.
In my Bucs 7-round mock draft, I did Isaiah Davis, and I am a
4th or 5th round.
I think I did 5th.
Is that the Utah
And
guy?
I am a huge fan
of Isaiah Davis. Tell us a little bit about him.
Yes, and I like it for the simple fact that he's kind of that bruiser between the tackles, power back, short yardage, goal line situations.
That'd be nice.
And I feel like he would be the perfect complement to Rashad White, and really throughout Skip Pete, the Bucs running back coach, he's always had kind of that 1-2 punch in the backfield. Like when he was in Dallas, he had, Zeke Elliott, he had Tony Pollard. And I think I think the Rams with Todd Gurley, and I think maybe one other spot, he's kind of always had that 1-2 punch. So I think having a guy to add to that with Rashad and kind of open things up for both of them could be good and help keep Rashad White kind of fresh in the game as well when you have both of them coming in and out.
Yep. But that you could even do in day 3, it sounds like.
Yes.
Well, great. All right. Well, we figured it all out. Now we know. You don't even have to watch the draft, everyone. We've laid it out for you.
Right.
Okay. Thanks, Bree. I appreciate it. Looking forward to reading your final mock draft. And if you don't get at least 10 of them right, then you'll be docked a week's pay. And I have the authority to do that.
Banned from the facility.
A non-paid leave of 1 week.
Yeah.
No. If you get 10 right, I will shower you with praise.
Oh my God!
I'd probably write an article about it because I've never gotten 10 right.
I doubt it. That would be crazy.
Usually, after the draft, somebody out there kind of like audits what the quote unquote experts said in their drafts and kind of says who did the best. And usually, the people who win have like 9 or 10 right.
Right.
I mean, that's like
which still is astronomical. Yes.
All right. Well, thanks, Bree. I think that's going to wrap it up for us here on the Salty Dogs podcast. And since Jeff isn't here, then I will say his famous words. Since you did, thanks for listening.